Okay, ready to start, ladies?
Ready. Take it away, Cindy.
All I have to do is make sure I can see where the buttons to advance the slides are. There they are. Hi, everybody. I'm Cindy Atlee, founder of the Narrative Intelligence Collective. We are a group of coaches and facilitators, and we work really extensively in private companies and NGOs and government agencies with what we hope you'll agree is a really exciting leadership and culture building method. So what we're going to do today, we're going to be talking about the difference between storytelling, which is a craft for capturing attention with content, and story typing, which is much more of a leadership tool for letting other people know who you really are and what's best and most effective about you. So we are very excited, all three of us, to be here with you today. Still making sure I can get the slides to advance. There we go. So as you can see, there's three of us, and we all have different companies, and we collaborate to spread the word about what we call narrative intelligence through the collective, the narrative intelligence. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with some examples of how we individually relate to narrative and use it in our own professional worlds, and then share more about the theory and the background behind narrative intelligence. And as we talk, what you're going to see is that there are many ways to develop a professional narrative. You can use stories about yourself, about people or characters you relate to most, about plots that capture something that's really meaningful or significant about what your work means in the world. But the important part is that the element that unites them all is that they're going to evoke just a singular character and one that other people will use what they intuitively know about story and narrative to associate the traits of that character with you. So it's an exciting process. And what we're going to do is tell you a little bit about each of us as a way of starting that. Through this framework. So we'll be introducing you to the framework that's most foundational to our work, and it's called story typing. It's a system that includes these 12 great characters from stories that everyone knows and knows how to tell. And what you can see from the chart up here, there's 12 different characters, and you know very well that they each have a valuable but distinctive set of strengths and values and motivational drivers. You know that a jester is different than a magician, for example. But one of them is most like you. That's one of the things we're going to be exploring today. And it captures who you are at your best a little bit better than the others do. So pay attention to that part as we keep talking. See if you can choose one even right now from the list on the slide. Because what ends up happening is in this system that we're going to talk to you about, when you make a deliberate choice to show up more like that type, you'll begin to create and convey an authentic professional narrative that makes your real value more clear to others. And you'll also unlock your own capacity for being more creative, more collaborative, more resilient, more productive, but you'll be doing that in a way that's really natural to you. So just spend just 1 second thinking about which one seems most like you. And what we're going to do at the end is we're going to share a link to a free online survey tool that you can use to quantify the type for yourself. But let's think about and talk about how different it is to see yourself as a character instead of a job title or a role or something else. So I could introduce myself to you by telling you that I'm a branding and culture and leadership coach, which, riveting, not so much. I could tell you that I'm a creator who lives to help my clients see and share their authentic value with others. Might be a little bit more interesting. But the other thing I could do is I could tell you that I'm most inspired by the tale of a faraway village where a pregnant woman takes her friends into the woods and stays there until her unborn child has taught them his or her song. The song is then shared with all the other villagers who sing it to welcome the new child and on every special occasion after that. And especially at any time when he or she has done wrong, because those villagers believe that reminding someone of who they are at their core is the best way to keep them true and authentic to their own special way of doing good and contributing to the world. And that's what my work is really about. I help my clients create the equivalent of a song that conveys what's most effective and appealing and inspiring about them. So I'm a creator, and I'm going to have Friderike and Sarah tell you about how their types are different. So Friderike, how about you?
Yes, thank you, Cindy. So my character is the magician. And for as long as I can remember, stories of transformation and magical possibilities have captured my imagination. I felt drawn to characters who could see and sense the invisible, who had a relationship with the essence of beings or objects. And I felt that I had that kind of power myself, but I did not know how to express that. And I just felt like I didn't quite fit into the German world of clear expectations, rules, and regulations. I just knew and learned the hard way that routine and sticking with the status quo made me feel trapped and antsy. As a child and young adult, others often called me a dreamer of castles in the sky, and they may not have taken me quite seriously because I could not quite express who I am and what I wanted to do. Eventually, I became a serial entrepreneur who was most excited about transforming ideas into action. So that's your magician energy, is transforming from what is into something else. I always started to lose interest after a business got traction, and I reinvented myself professionally about 3 times before I discovered coaching and organizational development, and finally, story typing. When I learned about the character of magician, I finally started to make sense for myself. There was nothing wrong with me not fitting into a neat mold, and in fact, it gave me that special power that I had always sensed was there. Seeing the mighty oak in an acorn before it was even planted, that magician vision of the invisible, and turning that into something tangible. Today, I coach towards potential and possibilities, and I help businesses through major transformation. And I absolutely love and adore that space of something always changing and happening. And I also do realize now that a lot of people do not feel comfortable in that energy, and that's when I help them walk through it. So every client, every assignment is new, and my ability to sense the essence of people and ideas and making that invisible potential visible and actionable is what gives me energy and drives the success of my work. And now I'm going to turn it over to Sarah, who's going to tell her story typing story and character.
Thanks, Ika. So I'm an explorer. I've been on the road to find out since I was a child. The world as a whole is a very comfortable place for me, and I'm on a never-ending expedition of seeking to learn, discover, and understand what it means to be human through the kaleidoscope of history, heritage, culture, and others' lived experiences. I scout new possibilities and paths, and I love to stand on the horizon and find ways to make it safe for people to join me at the edge. My travels have brought me to 35 plus countries. I work across 5 continents and have had the pleasure of working across a variety of people ranging from a Nobel laureate to government advisors, officials, artists, curators, war survivors, historians, doctors, and the list goes on. And I share that because as an explorer, what motivates me is this thirst for learning and for discovery. So as a coach, I'm agnostic, so to speak, to industry and to level. What I love to do is, and the work I do is I guide organizations from as large as Fortune 100 to as small, so to speak, as startups, along with working with individuals at all levels of achievement to help them discover themselves, and with that, to build a pathway of alignment and belonging in their world. You've now heard 3 stories, and those 3 stories are 3 of the 12 archetypes. And as Cindy mentioned in her opening remarks, it's an opportunity to start to show how stories go beyond entertainment and amusement. We hope these are entertaining and amusing. Again, narrative intelligence is really about what's underneath, what sits underneath the story. How can we as individuals, how can leaders bring forward, yes, entertainment and amusement, and really go deeper, though, from a place of authenticity that helps to, even though we're going to that underlayer, make things relatable, fun, and to come from that place of natural authenticity that when you think about it, and hopefully you've heard in just how we've told our stories, that place of authenticity makes it inviting for people to come in, to step toward and to engage with one another, and to really engage in a way where hopefully we feel that connection and we're able to identify with each other without losing the sense or the core of who we are. Human brain, if you think about the science of this for a minute, the human brain is hardwired to take in information through narrative forms. And so we have storytelling, but as Cindy said, this is really about story typing. And how does the human brain take that narrative form and start to make meaning of it? How does it start to break down these stories in a way that, again, helps to empower engagement, connection, understanding, compassion? We could go on and on with the list. And with that, when you think of the neuroscience of what the brain is doing, so this hardwired organ is breaking down narrative. It's breaking down that narrative into neural pathways. And it's the formation of those neural pathways that reinforce the learning, reinforce the memory, and with that, the experience. What is that experience like when you're hearing someone else through their story and through that authenticity of what most motivates them and what they value? Narrative intelligence and story typing, think of it in a way as a big decoder ring. So as I was just sharing with the previous slide, when talking about making meaning, we make meaning through narrative, and with that, we break things down into recognizing patterns, hearing people in their quest, recognizing and being able to relate to the obstacles that they might be experiencing or the challenges. And then with that, again, all of this is about how do we connect? How do we relate? We connect through inspiration, excitement, engagement, curiosity. And that's what story typing does. It helps to break that all down in ways that our brain can make meaning of it. And then we're able to take that meaning and put it into action. Cindy?
Yeah, so isn't it cool that we can take all that stuff going on in our brains that looks like disparate pieces and turn it into something that's how everyone is able to not only understand themselves in the world, but in the sense of a leadership narrative, see themselves, the pattern recognition. So what ends up happening, of course, is we're not sitting around recognizing patterns. We're relating to characters through these forms that we all get so well. So how does that add up to anything meaningful when it comes to our own personal, leadership style or narrative? So the brains are definitely using these same patterns to see ourselves. So when we're at our best, we automatically and intuitively sort all those fragments of our personality and experiences into a role that's like the characters we know from these great stories. Or maybe we see ourselves as like a metaphor for one of them, like the lion here. But a couple of things can happen. If we focus on the negative thoughts we have about ourselves, we can shape the story threads into something that actually turns out to be pretty disempowering, not like that lion. But we want to look like the lion or whoever else we see when we look at the best part of ourselves in the mirror. When we use this positive, genuine lens, then we have the opportunity for this powerful and engaging role to emerge. But the question is, are we going to show that sense of who we are to the rest of the world? We get to decide that. So when you decide that you do want to show the world the best part of yourself, you're really kind of unleashing a new way of being. But it does mean that you've got to see and embrace what's most unique and valuable about you. And this really authentic role. And you've also got to accept, and this part's really important, You don't have to be like someone else to succeed or stand out. You also have to believe that this is not the stuff of fairy tales. That's a cool way stories get used, but we're now talking about how human motivation and meaning actually operates in the world and can make us better as professionals. It doesn't matter if our lives are ever going to be, recounted in a book or a movie, or whether we'll ever be recognized as a celebrity or a public figure. Every single human alive is very much like one of these characters. So the same awe and wonder that moved a Yuri Gagarin to explore keeps modern day aerospace professionals motivated in the same way. The inventiveness and innovative spirit of Leonardo da Vinci keeps on beating in the heart of a 21st century designer. And Merlin the magician's ability to see things that others didn't see and to connect the dots isn't so very different from a data analyst who can do that, to create a picture of what's going on. All of these have different narratives, and you will too once you decide to show up more like your story type would in the world. So let's think about this a little bit more. So a great thing that story typing does is help us set ourselves apart in a sea of professional sameness, right? So why bother to do that? Well, only because most of us would like to be more effective and engaged and empowered, right? And we'd like to be recognized for what's most valuable about us. So take a good look at these three business people. They have some superficial differences, but they look pretty similar, right? They have similar clothes and facial expressions, and probably even more obvious in the working world might be a similar attitude. In fact, we're all encouraged to look and act like a professional. And that ends up making us come across as pretty similar and maybe even a little bit boring, even though there's way more to us than that. So what if we could see what was happening on the inside of those same three people that were on the last slide? Now they look really different, right? They show up and they demonstrate values and strengths every single day. And the way that they do it allows us to understand much more about what motivates them and how they add value and what we can expect from them. So that woman on the left, she loves a challenge. She's a hero. The guy in the middle wants to transform what's happening in the world. He's a magician. The man on the right is willing to take responsibility for an entire enterprise. He's a ruler. Now, we recognize all these characters from movies and books, but they're just like us. They're doing what comes naturally to them, and they're offering a unique gift of themselves to the world. And you have that gift too. May not be anything like one of these three, but it's just as important. And it comes from the motivational driver in you that's just like one of these great characters. So we're full circle back to narrative intelligence now, and its use in helping us read these motivational patterns. When we know what story-based pattern is most like us, we're tapping directly into the power that drives us to meaning, but also to excellence, also to satisfaction. And when you know that about yourself, you can make some really specific choices about leading and communicating in similar ways. You can do things that showcase the strengths and values of this character. You can talk about things that remind people of that. You can tell stories about similar characters and why their work matters. So we're going to spend just a minute now letting you do this for yourself. If you guys have got like paper or something to write with, we'll give you a little opportunity to story type yourself. So this is the framework. You saw the 12 before. This is the framework that was developed by Dr. Carol S. Pearson, who is a best-selling author and renowned expert on the topic of archetypes. She spent nearly 30 years researching which characters recur most often in powerful and positive stories that we tell today across cultures and around the world. Then she organized them into 4 groups based on which characters contribute most to the 4 essential things we have to do at work. Don't worry so much about the quadrants. If anybody wants to know more about that later, we're happy to share more. But just take a look at the list, and just based on the title and those words that you associate with that type, Pick out one that just feels the most like you. You can't get this wrong. We're just playing now. So we're just gonna give you a minute to write down which one you think you're most like. Like I said, no one's gonna see it. Actually, we could see it. If you want to type it into the box, we could take a look later and see what kind of folks are in this session. So feel free to chat to type into the chat. But sit back just for a minute and think about what it would be like to really show up this way. What would it be like to step fully into the role? If you said, I am not a project manager, I'm a hero. I am not a data analyst, I am a jester. What would that look like? How would your working world be different? Spend just a minute thinking about that. I see some chat things going by. Yes, it is hard to see yourself as just one. So for now, yeah, we all have multiple parts of ourselves, but what's the part that most wants to carry you forward into the next phase of your career or your life or your world? And if you could do that, if you could say, you know what, I'm a magician, what would you do differently to demonstrate those strengths and values to other people? Maybe even just think for a minute about what kind of stories you should be telling. I'm going to pass this on to Friderike now to talk just a little bit more about how you can use any of this. Anything you wanted to add, Sarah or Ika, before we move on to kind of talking about the benefits here while they're finishing up their exercise?
Well, no, it's just for me personally, it really has, it allowed me to look at my strengths and values in a completely different way. And it was truly empowering to operate from this position of strength and very unique values to then be able to explain what I do to others and also attract the clients that would be my best fit. So I found this very, very empowering.
I would add, and I see someone made a comment, I think Patrick, you just mentioned a new archetype emerging for you. It's about who are we at our core, and then what are those opportunities for what I often discuss with clients around elevation. So elevation around how do you continue to take storytyping to elevate you in whatever way that works, while also finding new pathways or gateways, typical explorer, to learn and grow. And oftentimes that is going to be through it. Many of you in the chat said it's hard to pick just one, and Cindy, you acknowledge this. It isn't about just one, it's about a collection. So anyway, it's it just, I think fundamentally it's all about the fluidity of being human and the different ways in which we can really land on better understanding ourselves to connect with ourselves as well as with one another.
And I think one thing important to add, so Patrick said, I've been an explorer for so long. I think a new archetype is emerging for me. That's the beauty about the story typing too. It's not a set character that will stay the same for forever. As we're learning and we're emerging, there are different levels of expressions that we may step into. And I love to talk about the supporting cast of characters may change. Right, so I may have my magician is the strong core archetype, but then there's a supporting cast of character that is going to flavor how my magician is going to show up in the world. And yes, totally, based on our experiences and how we relate, that cast of characters may change, or it may develop a different flavor. So it's a very fluid framework that is fun and really talking to the core of who people are.
It also really varies a lot by person. So, like, I've been a creator since I was, born. You could never have given me a test ever where that wouldn't be my top type, ever. And then the other ones sort of move around underneath. Other people are a little bit different, but that's what's so wonderful about this system. It's a way of locating, it's like locate yourself in the story and see where it goes. So, Friderike, you want to talk just a little bit more about, okay, so this is fun, but is there more to it than that?
Yes, absolutely. So what the story typing helps us understand is really who are we at our core? This identity that we feel the strongest in the sense of self. And then, of course, it's key strength and capabilities. And it's when we can communicate that clearly to the world, it really opens up so many new paths and so many really great conversations. And it's the central values and belief systems that are being expressed with who we are and how we interpret the world and how we make meaning in the world. So all of that together is really the essence of who am I as a person, as a human being, as an individual, and then how do I relate best to the people around me? And that's exactly how we show up is then different, because we have a much more succinct sense of purpose and also a promise. You know, my promise to the world is enabling change and enabling transformation. Sarah's promise to the world is, you know, let's explore what is possible together. Let's explore something that isn't even in the here and now yet. So I have to be careful because my magician is always flavoring it a little bit. But it's different, very succinct, different promises that each character has to the people that we relate to. And then the energy and attention, right? If I know what gives me energy, I can explain that to the people around me. And if I also know what is energy draining for my character, I can see if I can find other people that I can partner with who can cover those activities and those responsibility with me or for me. So that energy and attention is really a big component too. And I get clarity through my character. Same then that relates into productivity and performance. And then also communication and change adaptive style. So it's really, it helps me filter out what is most important to me, where my strengths are, how to communicate that to others, and then set myself and my team up so that together we can really perform strongly. What I love about that story typing framework too, it allows me to create a team where I can now listen for whose voice and whose perspective is represented on my team. Where may we have a gap where I may want to bring somebody in who's going to close that for us. Because each character has something very specific to offer, and I want to make sure that my team is as diverse as it can be, so that we cover all these different ways of looking at the world and together can create something that is really amazing and strong. And then at the end, it also helps me uncover blind spots, because each character may have a narrow lens on some things that I may naturally not be thinking about. And it's really great to know that so that I can then bring in other voices to cover that.
Yeah, I hate that part. Just kidding.
So leaders with a strong professional narrative who see and live and communicate their storylines really attract a lot of energies to them. I don't know if you're familiar. One of my big heroes in the business world is Richard Branson. And he seems to be such a fun-loving adventurer. You know, there's some jester energy, there's some explorer energy, and it's just fun to see how he builds his empires, how he has learned from his mistakes, how he's bouncing back in a very unique way. So that's another way for you to kind of use that framework to see who is around me that I admire, and what story type may that be. If I had a business idea to pitch to somebody like Richard Branson, I better make it fun. And I better make it about something that is to be explored and that is fresh and brand new. And that way I can grab his attention and bring my idea to him, right? So it's seeing and appreciating my best self and listening for the best selves in others is really important. And you can very, very quickly then get to the core of an issue and try to find a solution with somebody else when you find that connection. So greater access to internal motivation, it fuels my identity and it really shapes my voice. And again, we mentioned that before, it's if you can operate from that clear sense of who you are, you establish a deeper sense of purpose and promise, and you understand your cultural fit in your environment better. And you may also be able to spot some of the dissonances that sometimes we experience, and there are explanations for that. And I now have a choice to say, okay, do I want to have my natural magician show up in this situation? Or do I want to bring in one of my supporting cast of characters and step into that voice, because in that particular environment with that particular client, maybe a different perspective would offer a better connection, right? So it offers a lot of flexibility. And in the end, it's delivering contribution and engaging with others. So all of that together creates a beautiful story arc, right? So again, we're communicating a quest. We're inviting others to come onto our quest, or we're joining theirs, and there's this clear sense of accomplishment and the end of the happy ending of the story. And so here's our invitation for everybody who is joining our webinar today. You can self-select your character like we already invited you to do, but we also have a free online tool on www.narrative-intelligence.com. So we invite you to take that full assessment at no additional cost, and it will give you guide you through a set of questions. I think it's 96, Cindy, right?
96 questions, yeah.
96 questions.
20 minutes, yeah.
Right, so it doesn't take too long, and the system then will help you identify your highest scoring character, and it gives you a little bit of a description and the framework for it. So we invite everybody to take that assessment. It's free, and learn a little bit more about it. So that was our framework. I hope that you had fun with it and got maybe intrigued to find out a little bit more about it. And we did put an appendix together. So when you get the deck for our presentation, in that appendix, the characters are explained in greater depth and detail. So feel free to use that. And if you do have any questions, please reach out to us via our website, the narrative-intelligence.com site. And we would be happy to engage with you and answer some questions that you have if they pop up after the seminar. And now we want to open up the floor for your questions.
Artem, are you
there's an interesting question in the chat, Cindy. Are there story types that conflict with others? Lee is asking that question. So maybe you want to talk to that.
To talk to that one?
Mm-hmm.
Well, all characters, so I would say the answer to that is yes and no. So the yes part of that answer is all characters that have differences have an inherent view of seeing the world differently. So is there more of a clash between a hero and an every person, or a jester or a magician? I don't really think so. There are pairs that are inside this system. I just think that what's great about this is understanding if you get that your motivational lens is different than someone else's motivational lens, you can start to predict what the conflict might be about. And hopefully this opens up your appreciation to go, just because none of these are good or bad, they just are. And I need to allow you to be you, and I need to understand that if I'm a caregiver with a super focus on people, and you are a creator with a super focus on ideas, we're going to come at things with a different way of looking at the world and reconciling that with each other and being open to what the offer the other one has is huge.
And what I would add, Cindy, is in addition to anticipating where there might be conflict, it's being able to read tension and conflict when you're in it, because we're all human and we're in reaction to one another. And so how many times have any of us reacted with emotion and, wow, this is personal? Yet now we can be in a place, I think you said this earlier, of getting in front of it, recognizing where ego is taking over and putting ego off to the side, saying thank you very much, and being able to engage and appreciate where is this tension coming from, and then turn that into opportunity, right? So
I have a neat story about that. So there are a couple of story types that potentially, because they come at things from a different perspective, can create tension. And at the same time, if you find appreciation in the differences, you can be a power pair. And for me, it's like what creates tension a lot is a ruler type. So my magician wants to be free-floating, looking into the future, transforming, changing all the time. A strong ruler may look at, I want to make things stable. I want to make things predictable. I like rules. I like regulations. So if I can open up my heart and my vision and really embrace what a ruler can give me, the ruler can stabilize my magician, right? So together we can be an incredible power pair. Or we can really get onto each other's nerves if we don't appreciate the differences. And I can say, oh my God, I'm bumping against these rules and regulations all the time. It just feels awful. And the ruler may look at me and say, oh my gosh, it's never good enough. There's always the next thing that needs to happen. There's always this forward motion, and it's just tiring me out. So it's really a matter of how can I appreciate what is different from my core values and my differences, and how can we truly partner? And for that, it really has allowed me to connect to people that maybe normally I would experience tension with, but now when I come from a sense of appreciation for what they have to offer, it works so much better.
Yeah. And it's a kind of a choice you can make as to what level of consciousness you want to operate at. Do you just want to operate? So there's 3 levels to these story too. There's the one where it's all about me. And then there's the one where, well, it's all about a few people around me that I want to be in my affinity group. And then there's, I got to take in a bigger lens of the whole world. So, we can ratchet it up and down all day long, but to be aware that that's what we're doing is really important. Yeah. Let's see. Artem, did you want to throw out some questions to us? You want us to just keep going through? I'm seeing some clients get defensive about. Help us out with where you want us to go next.
And we'll be wrapping up.
Was there a particular one you wanted us to hit?
I think there was this one. How do I encourage them to come along on the ride and try this out? By Adley. I think this one's good about the story types.
Oh, so maybe it comes either people don't want to be put in boxes or they think it's too touchy-feely. I just find when I start having the conversation, so this you guys might have better answers to this. I found when I start having this conversation, people relate to it so much that the barriers fall away really, really quickly. So I don't know that I have a particular technique other than, let's just look at ourselves, a little bit differently today and see where that takes us. It might take us somewhere, it might not. And Sarah, Ika, what do you think about that? I guess I'm so passionate about it that people, maybe I just steamroll them and they go along.
So I've coached at NASA quite a bit, scientists, right? And you think scientists are all about data, they're all about, logic, and maybe that story typing would be a little bit too fuzzy-wuzzy for them. And it was amazing when people recognize themselves in that story type. I'll always ask, would you like to explore? And just look at things from a different way without attaching this is going to be the truth. Right? This is just one way of reorganizing data, if you will. And when I frame it that way, it says, look, let's look at data in a different way through a story lens. They were so thrilled to come along on that journey because they did recognize themselves. And then they were able to put their own leadership narrative around what it is that they did. And it just, it developed a different quality for their work, especially when they talk with people outside of the organization or outside of their own division. It was always really amazing and eye-opening. So I didn't really experience much reservedness around that.
Yeah.
Same experience. It's intrigue. It's because it's a different way of looking at self, and everyone with whom I've worked they just find it very relatable. And to Ika's point, they more often than not, the feedback I receive from my clients is, wow, I'm finally reading something that gets me. I'm finally accessing language. It's the first time where I'm accessing something that I feel as if it's mirroring back to me, who I am, and it crystallizes what they already sense about themselves and know, and starts to thread and precipitate in a way the integration of the self. So it's Ika, like you, I work with a lot of people who are very much in their head, and I guess another way of putting it is I find it really helps people balance head and heart, and to again just expand perspective. So
yeah. Oh, and here's something really, really important. We work with the tool itself, and that gives them numbers. You hand them a sheet of paper with numbers on it if they're super left-brained. Yeah.
Works great. Colleagues, thank you so much. This was amazing, and we can see that this typing really got us into the interest mode of our audience. So one last question to all the three of you. I want your take on this phrase I just made up for all our speakers. So imagine the story came to life, to being, and was to tell leaders one important lesson. So if there was just one and only lesson to tell, one truth to tell, that one truth would be?
Our stories unlock all of our motivational power in the world.
If you truly know who you are and what your promise is to the world, you can be incredibly powerful. Anybody can be incredibly powerful.
Brings you home to yourself, and in coming home to yourself, it invites others to do the same.
Great. Thank you so much. Lovely. A great triple answer from you. Okay, folks, let's thank our speakers
so
for
much.
this especially good display of story typing with the fires and the thank yous in the chat. Thank you so much. That was lovely. Please stay as long as you like.
Thanks, Artem.
Yes.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Have
This
a
was
wellness
great.
together, Artem.
Love the format.
You're such a bliss. Thank you so much.
Bye,
Bye.
everybody.
Bye.